Was the Pelicans 2022-23 season a failure? I understand you have to have a title for YouTube videos. I get that. Every movie has to have a title, right? But this isn't even a question. Yes, it was a colossal failure, a monumental failure. One of the biggest disappointments as far as a team in one season that I can remember. I was in the blender last night. I was there for the Thunder game. I've been a season ticket holder for 2 years. I've gone to 60 plus games over the last 2 years, which is a whole lot more than Zion can say. I'll tell you that much. And this year was a disappointment. This year sucked the life out of the city. New Orleans was a basketball city, not no mo. The New Orleans is now a man, I can't wait for football season city because I'm tired of watching the Pelicans. The Pelicans didn't, and we'll talk about this a lot in this video. So I'll let the video play before I really pop off. But the short answer is that yes, it was an enormous failure.
Pros and cons of this one. And everybody can add to it.
Pros and cons. Whoo! I can't wait to hear the pros.
I've got mine on here. Whatever jumps out to you, let's put it together and put it on balance. Was this season a failure?
Yes.
I will say this. I will say unequivocally yes, right, as a whole. I don't think, and I'm not going to tell any of you that you shouldn't think it's a failure, but that doesn't mean that there's nothing to be excited about or
Here's the deal with the NBA. The NBA is a little different than the NFL. You know, like the NFL, you make the playoffs, you're battling, you're one of the top 10-ish teams in the NFL. That's good. Like a franchise can develop from that. In the NBA, the worst possible thing you can be is average. That is the worst possible thing. If you are not one of the top 4 teams, I would say, then you really probably need to blow it up. Or you need to really think about how you can dramatically change the roster you have. Because no one wants to be the Raptors right now. Like the Raptors are just a mediocre, average team who, yeah, they're a playoff-ish team, but can they really threaten? No. Will they get a good pick? No. That's not where you want to be. You know. So the Pelicans, it's harder to see the positives in the NBA because of the way that the NBA is structured.
No positive building blocks as well, even through all the frustration. But let's start with the bad. On my cons list for the
bad, Zion, that's the biggest possible bad. Willie Green, bad. The injuries were unlucky, but that was bad. Willie Green again. The main two things, like, look, I'm recording this a day after the game, so a lot of this will be knee-jerk reactions, me being very angry at the outcome. But it really was a perfect storm that hit the Pelicans this year. You know, Jose Alvarado gets hurt. Larry Nance was hurt. We traded Devontae Graham so that Jose could kind of step into a new role and to save Devontae's contract. Well, when Jose's hurt, that's just another starter you don't have anymore. So all that was happening. CJ's shooting hand, or one of his hands, was absolutely destroyed. He's going into surgery ASAP. He said he should have had surgery 3 months ago. So we had a hobbled CJ, no Larry Nance, no Jose, no Devontae, no Zion. Herb, I would say, regressed a little bit. Definitely regressed offensively. Trey, I would say, was better. I would say Trey had a better sophomore year than his freshman year. Jonas, 90% of the year, was terrible. But the reason I said I thought the Pelicans could be the best team in the West, was because of how deep they were. The thing that I thought was impressive was that you roll out your starting lineup of whoever, Brandon, CJ, Zion, Herb, Jonas, and Larry, or some combination of that. And then you go into the Trey Murphys and the Jose Alvarados and whoever else, and the Najee Marshalls. Well, when all those players are hurt, that second lineup becomes Kyra Lewis, Josh Richardson, Jackson Hayes, Dyson Daniels. And that team's just not good enough, bottom line. Like, especially when CJ's hobbled. So, as much as I want to just say, like, these are a bunch of losers, get them on a first-class plane to nowhere, you do have to kind of sit back and say, like, okay, there was a tremendous amount of bad luck with injuries, actual injuries that did happen to the team.
The 22-23 season, Jake. Obviously, to me, it starts with the injury drama. Both like the actual injuries and the drama surrounding the injuries, right? The actual injuries in that you barely had your best players, your two all-stars, in Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson.
Yeah, I mean, and then even the players who were out there, like Brandon Ingram missed a lot of time with injuries. CJ was just injured the entire year. So even when, like yesterday, we had CJ and Brandon on the court, but we didn't really have CJ on the court. CJ was more of a facilitator, but we need that second scorer. You know, the best version of the Pelicans was CJ, Brandon, Zion. It's like, okay, who are you going to stop? Because if you try and stop them, Trey Murphy's right there. Herb Jones is right there. You know, Jonas is there. So when Jonas is your fifth option, your sixth option, he's the man. When he's your key cog to the offense, that ain't good.
To make matters worse, you barely had your sinew, right? Your bones, your kind of your glue guys, and guys like Jose Alvarado mainly, Larry Nance in portions of the time. It just felt like whatever, injuries classic. Right?
For sure.
Bad, awful year for injuries, especially with your superstars though. The drama surrounding the injuries though, as well, was awful. Whether it was the rumors swirling around Brandon Ingram not feeling right and not returning from a toe bruise for an extended period of time as the Pelicans were just completely falling apart and desperately needing some sort of help, and he was just nowhere to be found. Now, he eventually came back. He worked through it. He was great down the stretch. He's the reason why you even made something out of this season. And then, obviously, just all the Zion stuff is just out of control.
So let me talk about the Zion thing real quick. So Zion is an interesting case because here's how I view this. So you hear this a lot with people recently where mental health and anxiety and the yips, basically, like panic attacks. And anyone who's played golf or anyone who really played anything, you know when it hits. You know it's like if you're playing baseball and a bunch of grounders go between your legs, you can get to where it's like you are scared to death of that next ground ball. You know, like it feels like it's impossible to just make a clean play. And then, you know, so I understand that aspect of what people are saying. I think it's real. You know, I think mental health is real. I think anxiety, panic attacks, however you want to phrase it, I think should be taken seriously. I don't think it's one of those like rub dirt on it, you know, whatever. With that being said, there comes a certain point where in sports, you are one of very few players. Like, you're one of very few people, and you're getting paid a tremendous amount of money to do something in a short period of time. Like, if you're having panic attacks or anxiety at the office and you're an accountant, you can go to therapy, you can take a couple months off, you can work from home, you don't have to you can get right on your own. There's no like ticking clock. There's nothing in the background that's either making you like you're not on a time clock like an athlete is, right? Like an athlete in the micro time, if you miss 2 months because you're dealing with anxiety and depression, well, that's a huge chunk of the season. Also, if you miss an entire year dealing with it, that's your contract, that's your prime. You know, like there's so many more things that go into sports when it comes to mental health. If Zion is just afflicted with mental health right now, he's just eaten up with anxiety, all that stuff, I hope he gets the best care possible, and I hope he gets through it. But if you're the Pelicans, there's no way you can pay him $140 million or whatever it is and make him the center of your franchise if you don't know if he's going to play. And you don't know how much he's going to play. And it's a case-by-case basis. There are other people out there. There are other people out there who will do the job. And sports is the most dog-eat-dog world there is, bottom line. Kyle Lowry, I think it was the finals. It was in the playoffs. But he had a panic attack, and he had to go to the locker room. It was like, it was a playoff game. And he had to go to the locker room and get himself together. And then he missed whatever it was, half of a quarter, a whole quarter, something like that. And I remember at that time saying, like, look, I'm glad he's getting better. I'm glad he did what he had to do for himself. But if I'm the Raptors, I can't win with that guy. You can't go into you can't go into the situation that Zion was in, where he's doing windmill dunks before the game. He's not injured. I think we can all say that. He's not still hurting with a strained hamstring. It's very obvious that the strained hamstring happened. He got better, then mentally he collapsed, and now he's been trying to build himself up mentally. The fact that his anxiety or whatever it is so bad that he can go out there, windmill dunk, put on a show before the game, it's all over Twitter, dunking and doing all kind of stuff on the court pregame, and then when it comes time to play, he sits on the sidelines and watches his team, watches his teammates, watches CJ McCollum, watches all of them go through that kind of loss, watches the fans, watches his team get eliminated. That kind of player, if I'm the front office, you can't win with. If I'm the front office, you just can't. Give me anyone else. It's crazy to say, but I would trade Zion right now for a ton of people in the NBA. I mean, these are like trades that would never happen, but like Paolo Banchero, if somebody was like, hey, give me Paolo for Zion straight up, okay, sure, sounds good. Karl Anthony Towns, all right, cool, sure. Let it rip. Like players who are available, players who are there, players who will do things. At this point, the Pelicans have to look at Zion, or have to have the conversation with Zion where it's like, where are you at? What do you want to do? What's your future look like? How do you see this thing playing out? I honestly would not be surprised if he just retired. I mean, what is he, 21 years old, a couple $100 million in the bank. It might just not be worth it. It might just be one of those things where he says, I just can't do it. It might be like a Ben Simmons thing where you just get in such a funk that you just can't get back to where you got to be. And I hope that's not the case. I hope Zion is better down the road. I hope he does get it figured out. I don't know if the Pelicans have time to waste figuring out if he can get it figured out.
And especially in light of just the last 3 days news cycle where everybody, got Dave Griffin saying he's healthy but didn't want to play, and then Zion saying he's healthy but didn't want to play. It's just absolutely awful. Other bad things for the year. And if you want to add on to any of these points or feel like I'm missing a point, just jump in.
I mean, I think that I think that this season was a disappointment.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Huge
like I said,
failure.
I think at the beginning of the conversation, unequivocally a failure. I'm not defending that. I'm just trying to look at, okay, what are the pros or what are the cons and what are the pros?
Yeah, I mean, last year you made it past the point with this same group because, again, surprise, surprise, you didn't have Zion. And you made now obviously Larry Nance and Jose, to your point, like that obviously affects it. But even if they're able to get into a playoff series, I'm not sure that we would have seen the same things that we saw against the Suns a year ago. So yeah, I think it is.
I mean, this was the biggest disappointment to me over everything, is that the team just didn't have the same heart. Like, it didn't have the same heart. It didn't have the same kind of. It wasn't fun to watch them. I mean, I can tell you that just from going to the games. Like, it was a chore to watch this team. It was a chore to watch them play. They weren't the same, like, lively. I don't know if they felt the pressure of all of a sudden they went from this, like, kind of, ragtag group of guys just trying to play. I don't know if they went from that to, hey, we're supposed to be really good, and then it kind of bogged them down. But there was none of the energy from last year. Maybe that is Jose Alvarado being hurt and not being on the court. Maybe that is Larry Nance being hurt and not on the court. But if one or two injuries like that can derail the entire culture of the team, that's kind of, I don't know. I mean, that doesn't seem good. I remember last year, the Jose chants, the Let's Go Herb chants, just like the crowd was just insane, and the players fed off of it, and they were just, it was like one of those teams. It was like the perfect team. The team was just flying around. They seemed to be having fun playing. We were having fun watching them, and this year just wasn't it. I mean, this year, I hate to be such a downer on this, but I mean, leading up to the game last night, it was almost like, put us out of our misery. It was almost like, just in the season, I don't want to watch this anymore. Like, this isn't the Pelicans. This isn't the Pels. This isn't the same thing.
Disappointing. The winning record, and if you want to try to make yourself feel better about it, it didn't fall off a cliff. But just because you didn't take 7 steps back doesn't mean it can't be disappointing.
Yeah, I agree. So
I think we did, because you can look at the record last year and be like, oh well, it's kind of the same thing. But if you look at the record last year of this team, because remember, we were like 2-18 with Thomas Satoransky and Garrett Temple getting big minutes. Garrett Temple was playing 15 minutes a game. So that record last year is not the record. You'd have to look at the record in like the second half. You'd have to look at how good we were in the second half, how good we were down the stretch, how good we were in the playoffs. If you look at that alone, and then you look at this team, which is that same team with a full, longer time together, if you look at that, we are way 7 steps back for sure, no doubt about it. And the team last year didn't have Zion either.
Injury drama and everything, and just injuries in general, awful. Certainly being so good in the beginning and becoming so god awful in the middle was just a horrible fan experience. We talk about this all the time, right?
It was.
And actually rings very true today, Jake, because when you look at the record, like what determines a fan base's happiness, this is a sports core foundational rule, is not the objective numbers themselves. It's where do those numbers fall in relation to expectation. If I tell you before the year, Jake, you're going 42-40, I'm not going to say anything about the playoff. If I tell you before the year you're going 42-40, you take it. But when you are first in the West, and even in January when you...
See, I don't think you do. I mean, like, this team, their win total in Vegas was 43.5. So they had better expectations than 42-40. If you were to tell me before the season you're going to go 42-40, I would have said something really bad happened. I would not have said, like, yeah, sure, 2 games over 500. I mean, this is a team coming into the season where we're looking at this team going, this is the best roster in the NBA, which is insane to think now. But when you looked at this team and you look at the likes of, like, the Nets or something back then, it's like, would I rather have KD and Kyrie, or would I rather, and then a bunch of nothing? Or would I rather have Zion, Brandon, CJ, Herb, Trey, like all these players? This team, this is what I think makes a good fan experience. I think a good fan experience is whenever the team is the same as the fans. Like, the team plays how the fans want them to play. They're enjoyable to watch. The fans enjoy watching that team play. I think it's also important that the team wins at home. I think that's a big part of it. Fans, I mean, I'm not lying, guys. The last 12 games at home I went to, we were probably, we maybe were 4-8. I mean, I was just getting, especially now that sports betting is a thing, all over the place. Like, when you go to the games, you want to bet on your teams. You want to watch your teams win. You want to put something on, you want to have even more to root for. So when you're just constantly getting L's in your face, when the Pelicans win, they play this video of, like, a guy dressed in like a voodoo mask. I haven't seen that guy in months. In months, I haven't seen him. Because, I mean, some of the home games, someone else will go in my place or whatever. So it's not like every single home game, but it was just not a good fan experience at all. We lost games at home. We blew leads. That's another bad thing in basketball. You never want to see your team blow leads. That's the most frustrating thing to see. We did it last night. We do it all the time. We did it against the Kings. We were up, whatever it was, 15 on the Kings in the first quarter. We lost the first quarter. We were up last night like 10 in the first quarter. We lose the first quarter. Like that kind of stuff just drives fans crazy. And this year had all of that and more.
You are third in the West and a game out of first, and you look like you're potentially going to be a top 4 team. Well, then 42-40 feels awful. And a 10-game losing streak in the middle of the season. I mean, even if you had managed to stay bad, you would have made it, right? Like you had to get god awful to erase the greatness of the beginning of the season. And it's the inverse of last year, where you started god awful and got good. That felt incredible.
But, like, again, I don't want to keep harping on this, but it's totally different, because last year we started with an awful roster, and then there was huge moves made. Moves like putting our rookies in the starting lineup, moves like getting Jose Alvarado involved, moves like trading for CJ McCollum. Like, those kind of things happening last year, it honestly was like 2 different teams. The first half of the year was a bottom 4 team in the West. Really bad team. Gary Clark was getting minutes. I love Gary Clark. but he was getting minutes. He was one of our key guys. All of a sudden, then it was like, man, we got a roster. We've got young guys. We got people flying all over the damn place. We got CJ McCollum. We got Brandon Ingram. This team is sweet. So you can't compare that because it was like 2 seasons built in one. This is a totally different situation.
Because your expectations were shattered and bottomed out, and you far exceeded them. You allowed your expectation to rise, and then you crashed and burned. Felt like misery. I mean, the middle of the season felt like I'd crashed my car in a snow ditch, and then Kathy Bates had tied me up and snapped my ankles with a wooden block and a mallet. Just a horrible feeling.
It was awful.
Other cons from the year. It feels like you have little to no shooting in a day and age when shooting is all that matters.
This was crazy. This is something that happened like 2 weeks ago. I was in the stands at the Blender, and I was saying this. I was like, when the hell did we get a bunch of players who just can't play basketball? On the floor, we had Kyra Lewis, Josh Richardson, Herb, Dyson Daniels, Jonas, Larry Nance. And I'm looking around, I'm like, there's not a single person on the floor who can shoot. There's not a single person on the floor who I want raising up and taking a mid-range shot. There's not a single person on the floor who's comfortable to take a three-point shot. And you could even see them like just passing to the next person, passing, because none of them wanted to shoot. And I don't blame them. And then I think eventually Larry Nance like jacked up a three that bounced off the rafters, up top. Like, I don't remember that ever being a thing. I don't remember last year just looking around like, what's going to happen? Who's going to shoot? I have a lot of problems with Willie Green of how he handled this year, but there was no plays, there was no sets, there was no identity. It looked like someone playing NBA 2K. And when they got the ball, they would just hold the sprint button and run around, and that's how they try to get separation. There was no cuts. There was no screens. There was no ball movement. It was all like this ISO ball. It would routinely be whoever gets at the top, goes over like a bad screen, dribble the air out of the ball, pass it, and then they get it back. They try and make a move and get some separation. If they don't, then they're just jacking up a contested 18-footer. That happened like 75% of the possessions. And we'd play teams that people are cutting down the baseline. There's these beautiful plays. People are wide open. They're running plays. They're driving. I mean, we just didn't do any of that.
Now, you look up the stats. You're not the bottom of the league. I mean, you're average. You're around the middle in terms of percentage. I think you're like 22 or 21 in terms of makes a game. But I don't know. It's like maybe last place, like 10.1. I think you're at like 10.6 threes attempted or something per game. You're not great. You're near the bottom. You're in the bottom tier. I'd say the bottom third, certainly, of the league. But it feels worse than that. And it's because if you look at the rest of the bottom third of the league, those are all really bad teams.
I think a lot of that, too, was CJ being hurt. So defenses just keyed in on Brandon Ingram. And then Herb took a huge step back offensively. Herb last year was a guy who was driving a lot. He was getting fouled. He was always cutting to the basket. He was very smart with his runs. He was dunking. He was laying the ball up. He was always there. This year, he became kind of this like spot up 3-point shooter who can't shoot threes. So he would get the ball wide open and just miss threes when he really should have just penetrated. He should have just drove to the basket and tried to do something. And that combined with CJ's issues, all of a sudden, that's like two people who cannot do anything, who cannot shoot. Then you throw in a Larry or a Dyson Daniels, like I said earlier, and now you've got 3 or 4 people on the floor, Jackson Hayes, you've got 3 or 4 people on the floor at the same time who do not shoot. So that's what I think happened. It was like these terrible sets and but again, that goes to not having Devontae Graham, not having Jose Alvarado, like not having those players. I guess I didn't realize how behind them it was the same player. It was hustle players, it was defenders, it was athletes, but not necessarily shooters. And then all of those players were just like the bulk of our roster,
who aren't actually fighting for playoff spots. So when you are trying to judge yourself against your peers, who you want to be, just feel helpless.
Yeah, one of the things to kind of go back to, if we're talking about the middle portion of the season, is the moves you didn't make at the trade deadline. Knowing how much capital you have to be able to go out there and bring in a player. And no disrespect to Josh Richardson, but he ain't it.
Oh,
Look, no disrespect to Josh Richardson, but man, he was like the benchmark for what I thought was the problem with the end of the season. Josh Richardson cannot be on the floor getting major minutes in an elimination game. I tweeted this out last night. You cannot be on the end of a 4-17 run that we were on the wrong side of. And who came in? Kyra Lewis, Josh Richardson, and Jackson Hayes. Hey guys, they ain't gonna shoot us back after going down 15 points in the third quarter. Those three aren't going to shoot us back. Hard-nosed perimeter defense ain't going to get us back in this game. Like, I understand the Devontae Graham thing was a contract solution, and Josh Richardson was not supposed to be an answer. He was just supposed to be the 11th or 12th guy on the team. I understand all that, but I don't understand why there weren't moves made at the deadline. Why specifically Jonas? I think Jonas was a big problem because of what the West looked like. You knew the West was small, right? Let's pretend at the deadline you thought, oh yeah, this team can compete for the Western Conference. If you're looking around like, well, we really can't if we have Jonas as our 5 against Golden State or against the Kings or against the Nuggets or against any of these teams or the Timberwolves, where their 5 is kind of this like stretch guy who can handle the ball, who can play on the perimeter, who can shoot, who can run. The team is going to run and gun. They're going to play fast. Jonas can't do that. So I thought what we were going to do with the deadline is go try and find someone like Kristaps Porzingis or someone who can kind of run a little bit more, kind of play that new style of the 5. So just something there. We didn't do anything. Like the fact that we just stayed put, the fact that we just got rid of Devontae and brought in Josh Richardson and said, we'll see what happens, that is kind of crazy to look back on. I mean, I don't think it really would have mattered at this point, but that is a wild move looking back on it.
Irrationally angry at Josh Richardson. He doesn't deserve how much negative feeling I have towards him.
Yeah, well, that flagrant one last night.
That flagrant was inexcusable.
Yeah.
That flagrant was bad too. If y'all didn't see it last night, we finally go up, and then he like nut checks Josh Giddey, gets a flagrant. I mean, that was, but yeah, I mean, it's the same. I couldn't agree more with T-Bob there. Josh Richardson does not deserve how much I equate him with like the failures of the season, because it's not on him. He's just the face. Him and Kyra Lewis are my 2 big ones. Like, we're in an elimination game. We are down 10 in the fourth quarter. Kyra Lewis and Josh Richardson are on the floor. Like, that cannot be a thing.
There's no purpose, no reason for it.
You're letting freaking Twilight Cullen get in your head.
I liked your Outer Banks better.
I stole both. Dev said Twilight, and a response on the Twitter thread said Outer Banks.
That's okay.
So I'm in seeing both. Either way.
But you have all these
You can't
draft
let
picks.
Pretty Boy, you're a vet. You cannot let
Right. No.
18-year-old Pretty Boy Getty, who's dropping a triple-double and his nuts on your face, you can't let that guy get in your head.
Yeah, you're
30-point triple-double.
$12.2 million this year.
What?
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, that's why. Tell me.
Irrationally
Tell me about
angry.
it. Yeah. And that's who you brought in. You have all these first-round picks, all the potential to move all these, whatever you want. Okay, and you didn't make a move. You felt like, okay, no, we're good. And some of that could have been because they truly like, Zion's got a hammy. He's going to be fine. He'll be back.
Yeah.
Some of that
True.
probably came into their thought process.
It's like that
but they
Zion
didn't.
clip where he's like, February? Oh, wow.
Did y'all hear what CJ said after the game?
No.
Y'all want to hear it right now?
Yes.
It's pretty crazy. Okay.
Great.
CJ, so they're going to talk about here. CJ basically said, like, we need players on the floor. We need to be on the floor. And, I mean, if you're their teammate, like, that's another thing too. I mean, if you're Zion's teammate, and maybe that's why the culture wasn't there, is because maybe these guys were just pissed off. I mean, maybe these guys were resenting Zion. I know I certainly would have. If I was CJ and my bones are sticking out of my skin, and I look over and Zion's just sitting there as we're getting eliminated, I would be pissed. I'd be real pissed. I see him windmill dunking before the game. I'd be furious. So maybe the locker room was a little bit lost. I mean, I could certainly see that.
Producing here, Jacob. I'm proud of you. Let's do it.
Yeah, I think throughout my career, I've always been the type of player to to do whatever it takes to help the team. I could have took the easy way out and got surgery and sat and watched, but I'm not that type of person. I'm not that type of player. Even though it affected my performance, some nights I never made excuses. I just go compete and do the best that I can, and I always try to lead by example.
Okay, that is a beautiful clip. I mean, obviously, right, he is offering commentary on what he views as the Gen Z of the league, right?
I love CJ. A lot of people were giving CJ hate today. I think CJ's great. I love CJ being on the team. I think he's a great leader. He's great for the city. I like CJ probably more than Brandon Ingram, to be honest. I mean, he's just my guy. And the fact that he's hurt, the fact that he's playing through it when he could have, he's a veteran. He certainly could have said, you know what, guys, I'm getting surgery. I'm chilling. No one would have blamed him. But he tried to tough it out for this team and tried to see what he could do, and it did hurt his performance, no doubt about it. But yeah, I mean, I just it's hard for me to believe that the locker room wasn't affected by Zion.
The younger generation who are like, we're at 99%, but we got to be at 100 before we're going to come back. And also, Jake, again, we said it earlier, like, I'm upset with CJ that he wanted to take that shot late. But I don't want to go too hard on him because he's doing the thing that we have been begging these others to do. Be willing to put yourself out there, to be vulnerable because you're not 100%. Be judged, but you're still trying to do everything you can to help the team win. So, like,
he said he needed surgery 3 months ago.
Yeah, no, he did. That is a known fact. He's going to have surgery as soon as the season ends. Like, he deserves credit for that. And as an athlete, I've gone through that where because nobody really cares that you're hurt.
No.
Right? And so all you're seeing is like, oh my God, he sucks. And you're like, well, dude, I'm out here like playing one-legged against
Yeah, man, that's the thing with CJ. It's like people are like, man, he's just not scoring. He's not doing his normal things. And it's like, you got to remember, he's got like a broken thumb. He's got the cast on his hand. He's a shooter. Like, of course, that's going to be a huge hindrance on him. So, yeah, I totally agree with that.
300-pound defensive line. Like, CJ's like, I mean, I'm out here, I'm old, and I'm trying to fight for a playoff run, trying to do what all these young cats won't. And everybody's just talking about how bad I suck.
Yeah, the criticism I would have there is you have to realize that you can't do the things that you've always been able to do.
That's right.
And you've got to kind of delegate those shots to someone else.
Yeah.
That would be my one criticism because, T. Wolf's game, like, he had 2 different looks and had 2 free throws and miss them. And you have to realize, man, I can still be somebody that helps this team, and I can maybe create, or maybe I can, get a defender to flash to me and I can pass, whatever that might be. But at that point, it's like, I can't do what I've always been able to do because I'm not myself right now.
Yeah, I agree. It's not to say that he should be free of critique, but I just want to be
right. No, I like that answer.
Painfully emphasize that at least he's playing hurt. And so you have to be mad at him, but you also have to give him credit where credit
100%. No doubt about
it.
Next year, you're going to have 3 players next year that are making over $30 million.
You got a real problem now if you're the Pelicans. I mean, now if we're starting to shift towards the future of this video, you got a real issue because I'm not sure how good Brandon Ingram is moving forward. I'm not sure how good CJ is moving forward. I'm not sure how the window for these guys, so, and I certainly don't know what I'm going to get from Zion. So I think the Pels, let's say they do stick together. I think they have a 1-year window to try and win. And then you just got to blow it up. Because CJ will be 33 after this season, after like next season. Brandon, I didn't think he looked great this year as far as like physically. I thought he was kind of lethargic. I thought he was kind of like, he just looked kind of slower. I'm not saying he looked old, but he looked like, and he was hobbled. Maybe he wasn't 100% either, but Brandon looked different, I guess, than a, I mean, they're different players, but when a player like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's out there and Brandon Ingram's out there, Brandon looked almost like in quicksand versus like a takeover dominant kind of guy. So the Pelicans need to decide if they think they can win this upcoming year. And the biggest decision has to be what they're going to do with Zion. That has to be a big decision. not only for, winning purposes, but for the locker room purposes. Can the locker room handle hearing or dealing with all the Zion stuff again? Or is it time to try and get rid of him?
CJ's going to be making 35.8. BI is going to be making 33.8. And then this is going to be the first year that Zion's max deal kicks in, 33.5.
I mean, look, I think that Ingram's obviously worth it. You can't say Zion's worth it because he doesn't play.
He's not.
I know that CJ at that number feels bad right now, right? But look, in that god-awful portion of the season, the only reason you ever scraped together any wins was CJ putting it out there for the team. I think
you can win with CJ and Brandon, but if you take Zion out of the equation, you have to have a third. I don't think CJ and Brandon are good enough unless one of the when we were winning towards the end of the year, Brandon was playing like a top 10 player in the NBA. If he can be a top 10 player in the NBA, which I'm not sure if he can, if he can be a top 10 player in the NBA, you can win with CJ and Brandon. But if Brandon is more of a 15th to 20th best player in the NBA and CJ is more of a 20 to 25th best player, that's not enough, I don't think, for a legitimate run at the title. You would have to go get somebody. You would need like a third guy, I'm just going to throw names out there. I'm not saying to go get these guys, but like a Julius Randle or a Jimmy Butler type or a Karl Anthony Towns or players like that. You would need a third guy if you wanted to make a run.
I think that the end of this year is not
DeJounte Murray, players like that.
Wholly indicative of who he will be and can be if he's not dealing with a broken hand that needs surgery. I also think that one of the great values of CJ is intangible.
Yeah, for sure.
Leadership.
He is a leader.
Teaching Herb Jones, Trey Murphy.
Agree.
How to become these everyday pros, right? It's having comments like that and kind of by extension trying to show Zion, hey man, look, this is what it takes. This is the way. So it's not ideal, but I don't think the number for CJ there feels as bad as maybe, or is as bad as maybe it feels.
I agree. For a year, I don't think it's as bad as it sounds.
Other cons from the season. Some of the ways that you lost games down the stretch were awful. Blowing the huge lead in the uber important game against Golden State. Blowing against the T-Wolves where you would have been an 8 seed and would have had an opportunity to lose a game and still.
The Timberwolves game is a great example of like the entire season. The Timberwolves are literally fighting on the sideline. Their best player or their whatever, however you want to phrase it, Rudy Gobert is kicked off of the team for the game by his own team. Another guy breaks his hand punching the tunnel, and while they're fighting, you blow a 14-point lead and lose one of the most important games of the season. Like those kind of things right there is just the perfect microcosm of the Pelican season. When they are the definition of snatching whatever it is, snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. I mean, like how many leads did they blow? How many first quarter leads did they blow? I mean, it was just the same story every single game. Two things either happened. We either got boat raced off the jump and got beat by 40 and it was never competitive, or we get up to a big lead like 15 points and then we just lose the lead and that's it. And that happened last night. Up to a big lead, lose the lead, that was really about it. Whoop, whatever. Happened in Minnesota when the Kings were in the blender. Happening against the Kings, we go to a big lead, they come back, we never see it again. We end up losing by 20. Like it's just
make the playoffs and then blowing it against the Thunder last night. And while you won some big games, it did feel like at the peak, right? When you really got to the tipping point games, you just never found a way to win the biggest opportunities. Other things, I think it really hurts to watch these other franchises just blow by you. The Sacramento Kings left you in the dust, didn't think twice about you. The Oklahoma City Thunder continue to trade away every superstar they ever have. They're all 19 years old.
They have 15 first rounders in the next 5 drafts.
Yeah.
The Thunder's draft situation is insane. They have 2 picks coming up this year. Then they have 4 first-round picks the following year. Then I think they have 4 more first-round picks the following year. It's nuts what they got going on. And they have Chet Holmgren, who hadn't even played yet, coming back. And I mean, Shea is a superstar.
Yeah, it's
15 in the next 5.
Sam Presti's a god. If you want to know how to run a small market team, David Griffin, Trajan Langdon, go talk to Sam Presti. You've had 2 first overall picks and done nothing with it. Well, that's not fair. The franchise has. Griffin and them obviously have only been in Zion there. And then the Lakers even, right? Lakers were awful. They make shrewd moves.
I mean, the Lakers, like, that's different. They have LeBron James. You know, when you have LeBron James, it's easy to fix some things.
To the deadline, all of a sudden, they have the best record in the West post-trade deadline.
At this point, the T-Wolves.
T-Wolves blew by. So exactly. So
the T-Wolves traded some of their best players, and almost you're like, are they giving up?
Trust me, you don't want to be the T-Wolves right now. The T-Wolves, with what they did, they made the worst trade, I think, maybe in NBA history with the Rudy Gobert trade. Trust me, you don't want to be the Timberwolves right now. There's no way next year they can keep Gobert and Cat. I mean, the Timberwolves are in a terrible spot.
And they actually got better.
Yeah.
And the Lakers got better from receiving those players.
Yeah. It's so that was an awful feeling part of this season. And then, certainly last night, losing to a rebuilding team, the youngest in the league, while Lou Dort drops 27 and Josh Giddey gets you 30-point triple-double was awful.
At home.
Anything else to add on the bad before we get to the good?
So next year, I mentioned that those contracts are going to be over $30 million. They're going to have some decisions to make. Jackson Hayes, he's going to be somebody that's going to be potentially making $9.1 million. And Jackson Hayes, he's a very interesting player because it's like sometimes he doesn't play coach's decision, and sometimes they roll him out there for 27 minutes.
I like Jackson Hayes. I thought Jackson Hayes should have got a lot more minutes this year, especially whenever we were playing teams that obviously were too fast for Jonas. Jackson is super athletic. He's certainly not a shooter, but Jonas isn't really a shooter. It's like, so Jackson was just a more athletic, dynamic version of Jonas. I'm not sure why Jackson didn't get more minutes. I think we have a lot of fat on the team. When you look at the roster, I mean, I'm sure every roster is like this, but the Garrett Temples and the Willie Hernan-Gomez's and the Dyson Daniels and the Jackson Hayeses and the players who just DNP, they just DMP after DMP after DMP after DMP. I mean, bring in some people who can at least shoot. Bring in some people who can at least come in and maybe catch fire from 3. Bring in anyone. I mean, it just seems like we have too many players who just don't play or can't play, or they're just holding up a roster spot. I mean, I could have done what Garrett Temple did this year. Come in when we're up 30 or come in when we're down 30. That's it. Just kind of dribble the ball around. That's it. Catch, check. I mean, we just need, I can't believe I'm saying this, but we need more depth. We need more depth because a lot of what I thought was depth ain't depth at all.
And, obviously with Larry Nance, he was going to get some run there.
Larry's the man. I love Larry.
I truly don't feel like they have belief in because they don't put him out there consistently. And
they do not.
He's kind of got a wildness to his game. But even in the NBA, like $9.1 million per season is something, because when you look at your overall number right now, and this is without, I guess the only contract that would be coming off is Josh Richardson, because he was obviously on his last year of a deal. So you take that $12 million off, and you're $4 million under what you were this year, even with Zion's increase. But still, like, that could be somebody that you need to pay attention to. Maybe they could package him together with some of those picks that they have, because if I'm not mistaken, they're still going to have a chance at the lottery. Now they have the worst odds of getting the number 1 pick, but they're still going to get a decent draft choice. And I don't know where that draft choice would fall on this roster right now. I mean, you look at the first-round pick, Dyson Daniels, kind of the same thing as Jackson Hayes, like some ups, some downs, and
what happened?
Left you scratching your head a little bit. Yeah, as far as his playing time. Kyra Lewis is another former first-rounder coming off an injury. Like, what's the plan there? So you have –
Dyson Daniels is hurt, right?
I don't think he was. Right? I don't think he was. We were wondering that too, because Dyson has been kind of the first sub off the bench, and then he just DMPs last night. So maybe he was hurt, and we just didn't get the memo. But when the game was happening, no one in the stands was sure what was going on.
Crazy, Jacob?
I don't know for
Because
sure.
that's what arrested. He had great momentum at the beginning of the year, and the injuries, of course, are what did him in. I wonder if that's why he's still not playing. Sorry, Jake, I'd forgotten about Dyson, but yeah, I mean that's I would actually put Dyson in the positive category.
He was.
No, Dyson was ass. Dyson is the same problem as everyone else. Hustles, good defense, whatever, but raw, can't shoot, has nothing offensively. That's it. He was part of the problem. He was part of the rotation of like, man, we got to be really careful of who we're bringing on these rotations, because if we bring on too many of them, we literally have no one on the team that can score. This is the NBA. You can't play teams like the Warriors and the Kings or these offenses like that and say, you know what, we'll go 5 minutes with Kyra Lewis and Dyson Daniel on the floor with Herb Jones and Jackson Hayes. How are we going to score? You know, like that's how you get run. That's how you blow leads. That's exactly why we blew so many leads this year. Is because we would go 7, 8, 9 minutes with people on the floor who can't do anything.
It was a DNP actually.
Okay.
Yeah, DMP. Boom.
Well,
See, I knew he wasn't hurt.
Daniels is someone who had more high moments.
He played against the Knicks.
Yeah.
He
was a
played
coach's
like every
decision,
game.
for that game.
He had more high moments of this year than I feel like your NBA rookie normally has.
Yeah, he did.
I don't think so.
I'm surprised he didn't get any minutes.
So I would put
Yeah.
that in the positive category going forward. I don't know about Kyra Lewis, though, to your point.
Con.
I don't know. He got minutes.
Both
outside
in the
for a little
con
bit there. He
category.
missed that layup there where you saw
Ooh,
the
he was
speed.
bad. Yeah, he did, but he was pretty reckless in his
Yeah.
in his minutes. So my point is, you have all these former first round picks that you have, and I don't really know the plan for them. I don't know Jackson Hayes. I don't know Dyson Daniels. I certainly don't know Kyra Lewis, and that's 3 guys that are lottery picks. So I don't know what you do with those 3 lottery picks. And then,
Dyson Daniels will stick around unless he's packaged in a trade. The other 2 probably gone.
again, you got another lottery pick coming up this year. At what point do you try to do something with all of those assets?
Yeah, you probably try to package them or something.
Because you need shooting so badly. Like, even if you go get a sharpshooter, somebody that was a second-round pick and they don't have a lot to their game, but one thing they can do.
We need a player like Seth Curry so damn bad. Just like, not Steph Curry, Seth Curry. We just need a 6-man who can come off the bench, create his own shots, knock down some open threes, and that's about it. We really, really need that, and we need some depth with our bigs. Because Jonas, we need an answer for whenever we're playing a team that's just too fast, and Jonas can't play. And for some reason, that's not Willie Hernangomez. For some reason, that's not Jackson Hayes. I didn't hate the plan of kind of rotating Larry and Najee and letting Larry be like the starting center and let Najee be kind of this like weird small, like a Draymond Green type player where he's not really a center, but he's physical enough to play there. I didn't hate that plan, but we never saw that really come to fruition.
Do is put the ball in the bottom of the basket. You might have to say, you know what? We're not going to be prideful here. One of these former first-round picks, maybe we move a guy like that, give him another opportunity, and bring in a shooter.
Yeah,
but you know how it is, though. GMs in every sport. This is not just
do they
Trajan
care
Langdon.
as much in basketball, though?
I don't think they do.
In every sport they do.
I feel
I
like
don't think
Trajan
they do.
Langdon's actually done an awesome job drafting.
It's not that he's done a
Herb
bad
and
job.
Trey are great. Dyson's
But
great.
that's three players right there, though.
I feel like you rarely hit on 3, though. I'm saying, like, I feel
Well,
like
I don't know that you'd say he'd hit on Jackson Hayes.
No, sorry, no.
Or
I mean,
Kyra
no. I'm talking about Herb, Trey,
No,
and Dyson.
this isn't a conversation of they've drafted poorly, but that's 3 former first-round picks. And
Yeah,
I take Daniels out of it. That's 2. Okay, Jackson Hayes and Kyra Lewis. Certainly Kyra Lewis, because I don't know where he plays right now.
Yeah.
They're gone. I mean, I think those 2 guys are gone.
You have all these point guards. Jose's clearly passed him up as well. You gave Jose a new deal.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
why,
true.
why just have that person sit on the end of the bench and not play because of coach's decision?
That's true. That's fair. Champ is saying, Jake, the deepest team in the NBA is what was said on this program. Deep teams don't have injury issues. You had dudes that looked okay in the first month of the season. I mean, I just vehemently disagree. Like here is the part about the injuries. Is it frustrating? Yes. Is it an excuse? No, we know it's not an excuse. But, like, also, are we just going to be so obstinate that we're going to act like if you take the 2 best players off the team for the majority of the year that it's not going to kill you?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, injuries were a huge issue. Like that, we can be angry at the results, but you do have to acknowledge the perfect storm of injuries that hit the team. No doubt about it.
And then on top of that, you take away the depth. because you take away a Jose and Larry and CJ's
Yeah,
playing hurt
for sure.
and what Dyson Daniels hurt for large parts. Like, what are we talking about? Like, you can be deep and still get screwed over by injuries. Look
Yeah, that's exactly what happened to us.
at any sport, take the 2 best players off, and tell me what your team looks like after that. Nobody's gonna do it. It's just you're
Well, I
being-
mean, the bench at that point when we were talking about it, and like I said, that bench was Trey, Jose,
yes, yeah, exactly.
and Nate.
Exactly. That's what I was saying earlier in the video, is that the bench, when I was saying we were the deepest team in the NBA, our second lineup, in my mind, was Najee, Larry, Jose, Trey. It's like, man, that's a pretty good team just by itself. And then that wasn't our second team, and that wasn't even our third team. Like players who should have been our third team either DMP'd or got hurt. So I mean, not to drag him up again, but Josh Richardson all of a sudden became, from about the 4th team, Josh Richardson should have been DMP'd. But instead of that, he went all the way up to like the 2nd rotation.
Ants.
exactly.
Like those were, and Najee
The
Marshall.
second liners. Yeah.
I mean, so that bench looked complete. You didn't have 3 of those guys because Trey had to move into a starting role. Jose didn't play. Nance didn't play in that game last night.
Yeah. So
It looks completely different.
exactly.
Yeah,
You're-
100%.
You're being disingenuous there.
Yeah, you are. Yeah.
All right, so that was a negative. Coming up next, and this will be our final Pell segment before we start talking everything else. Coming up next, though, let's talk about the positives. So I do think there are positives here, okay? We're going to end
What
the
is it?
glass half full. Despite your, Tim, I don't want to.
What is it?
Stand on my feet. It's okay. Okay, we're going to see if I can make you a little excited. Probably not. More off the bench coming up next. So we're going to get to positives. All right.
I said you were going to get the positive.
Yeah. Why not? Why wouldn't we?
I'll give him one positive. I just want to hear one positive.
Dude, there are positives, okay? And we'll start here. Bottom line, I'm not telling you the season was a failure, like I said, but this is a positive. Bottom line, you had a winning regular season.
Okay, I've heard enough. That's not a positive. It's not a positive when you trade for CJ McCollum last year, when you end the season as good as you did last year, when you have who a lot of people consider is a potential MVP, Zion Williamson, a potential generational can't miss first overall player who hasn't played in 2 years. When you have all of that happening, when you have the deepest roster in the NBA, when you have one of the best fan bases in the NBA, it is not a positive to go over 500. It is never a positive to go under your season win total that Vegas puts out. It's not a positive. That is such a ridiculous mindset. I mean, do you think if the Kansas City Chiefs went 10-7 next year and missed the playoffs, you think they'd be like, well, winning record? No, you would not. The Miami Dolphins would be a good example. Miami Dolphins got a lot of hype this year. Were really good this year. Had some injuries with Tua, with his brain leaking out of his helmet. You think if the Miami Dolphins won 9 games next year and missed the playoffs, everyone would be super happy because they went over 500? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. If Aaron Rodgers goes to the Jets, all the hype in the world is behind the Jets. You think the Jets would be happy winning 9 games? You think the Buffalo Bills would be happy winning 9 or 10 games? No. The Pels should be good. The Pels should have been better. I understand the injuries, all that stuff. But there is nothing redeeming about being over 500 at all. The season was a disappointment. The season was an embarrassment. Honestly, I don't want to be dramatic, but this season kind of shook the fan base. I know a lot of fans, a lot more than you would think. I know a lot of fans who are voicing like, I'm done. Like, I'm out. I don't care about this team. I don't like this team. It's hard to root for this team. It's hard to watch these games. I've heard a lot of people who started the season really, really hyped. A lot of those people are saying, I'm not about it. I'll watch something else. I don't really care what we do moving forward. Move Zion, sell the team, send him to Seattle, whatever. Like, I'm hearing a lot of that. Granted, a lot of people are pissed off from last night, but I think this season was damaging. I think it really was. The Pelicans next year will have to come out hot. We will have to have like a deep playoff run next year. Something. Because the fan base is pissed. Let me know in the comments below what you think, ladies and gentlemen. I've taken up enough of your time. Let me know what you think. Was the season a failure? LOL, Pepe Giggle. How much of a failure was it? Are you pissed off if you're a Pelicans fan? Where are you mindset-wise with the Pelicans? Thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. I will talk to you in the next video.